When your eyes are shining, it's a great sign of health and vitality. In many cultures, it's thought that the eyes are the windows of the soul. The eyes are also a window into the vascular tissue of the body, and it can give us insight into a person's state of health. When people have systemic inflammation and bloodshot eyes, it's a sign of disease. Looking diseased has the effect of repulsing people. If you look at depictions of bad guys in TV and cartoons, you will see bloodshot or yellowing eyes to signify an internal imbalance. We've all seen someone with lusterless, dead fish eyes and suspected that something in them was missing. On the other side of the spectrum, we associate beauty, strength, and truth with clear eyes. When we have luminous, aquatic eyes, it's a sign of internal health and mental clarity. It's not only endearing, it's also a perfect state for restoring healthy vision. We are going to go over some incredible herbs for giving you healthy, shining eyes, which also restore vision. This is particularly important because we live in an age when much of our information comes from staring at computer screens. I'm not against it, but in any change in life, we must learn to adapt if we are to thrive. This is one of the reasons we shifted away from text into this podcast. After so much typing and screen time, we thought your eyes might enjoy a well-deserved rest. With so much of your work, social life, and entertainment focused around screens, it's very important to actively rest your vision and to use botanicals to help support its repair. Let's begin with tradition and see how it matches modern science. The point at which they meet is a sturdy foundation for self-experimentation to see how these botanicals will fit into the context of your life. A poor widow had a son. She had incredible stress due to her constant pressure. She was depressed and cried constantly. She found over time that her vision was blurry. Her vision worsened until she was effectively blind. Her son, Anyo, was desperate to make money to support his mother, so he sold himself into slavery to a powerful landlord for a term of 100 years. He worked hard as a slave. One night, he had a dream. A good-hearted young woman came to him. She said that on the west of a river is a white chrysanthemum. This flower could cure his mother's eyes. However, its power only awakened on the festival of the 9th month on the 9th day of the lunar calendar. He waited patiently until the 9th month of the 9th day and headed to the western bank of the river. He found the white chrysanthemum and made a decoction out of it. He brought it to his mother, who drank it and felt her spirit begin to lift. After taking the decoction for a few weeks, she noticed that her vision began to return. Later, the same girl came to his dreams again and taught him how to propagate the white chrysanthemum along the river. Since then, it became a custom to drink the chrysanthemum tea on the festival of the 9th day of the 9th month. This story likely never happened, but it's a very useful metaphor. Chrysanthemum is said to counter the energy of autumn. Autumn is a time that is related to the setting sun. It is a time when the year is getting cool, and it represents decline and death. This is why the woman said to look for it on the western shore. As the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, so too do the seasons start to blossom in spring and die in autumn. 9 is the number associated with autumn and the west in Chinese thought. This is a further hint that it can help with sadness, aging, and dealing with people in their twilight years. Autumn is a season of death and sadness. The mother was in a state of sadness and depression due to her oppression and poverty. Chrysanthemum is traditionally said to go upward and vent heat from the liver. This would be used to give the woman renewed clarity of vision at the emotional and physical levels. Chinese chrysanthemum is sweet, cold, and bitter. It's said to go to the lung and liver channels. It clears heat from the eyes and directs the effects of other herbs to the eyes. The yellow variety was already known. and it has anti-inflammatory effects, but the white flowers have effects particularly on the eyes. Modern research has shown that Chinese chrysanthemum has anti-inflammatory effects. Another very important effect is its ability to lower blood pressure. When your blood pressure is high, it's like putting your thumb on a hose. Just think of the pressure that can build up, only now consider that it's going to be hammering the back of your eye. High blood pressure can damage internal organs such as the liver, kidney, and the eyeballs themselves. This is particularly important if the quality of your blood isn't exactly clean. What I mean by that is the more debris it has, the more sugar it has, the more acidic that blood is, the more damage it's going to do. So it's important to remember that just because something appears soft doesn't mean that it's not tremendously destructive. Major depression is associated with elevated nitric oxide. Luckily, Chinese chrysanthemum increases superoxide dismutase, which would help to keep this in check. Chinese chrysanthemum is often taken as a tea, but its effects are multiplied many times over when combined with the next herb. This herb is called goqizi. During the Warring States era, 500 BC to about 221 BC, a young man was drafted into military service. When he finally returned home, 10 years had passed. As he neared his village, he found people gaunt and yellow, dying from starvation. The fields were abandoned, there were beggars everywhere, and children wept in the streets from hunger. He started to panic for the sake of his wife and mother, and in spite of his weakened state, he hurried home. He was relieved to see his mother and wife in good spirits. Their eyes were shining, and they greeted him with a smile. He asked how they had managed to keep their health. The wife replied that they had no access to food, so she foraged in the mountains and came upon some red berries. She told him, although we eat very little, it sustains us and gives us clarity. The wife had kept the knowledge of the goji berries to herself, but with the war over, people began replanting. The couple told everyone in the village to propagate these berries. The husband's name was Go, which means dog, and the wife's family name was Qi. As a result, the villagers called these berries goqizi, which was a combination of the husband and wife's name. It's sort of like calling them Bill and Sarah berries. The name stuck and is still used to this day. Even in the West, the goji berries are still echoing the names of two peasants in the Warring States era. This story is most likely historical. There is no glaring symbolism for memorizing the functions of goqizi, aside from the image of Qi and her mother-in-law with shining eyes. Another story about goqizi is more rich with metaphors. A Persian man in the Tang dynasty was traveling on business and stopped in a hotel. He saw a young woman scolding an old gray-haired man. The Persian man got angry, and he began to tell the young woman that this was no way for her to speak to her elders. The young woman immediately turned and started scolding the Persian man, saying that it was none of his business. The businessman was confused. The young woman told him that she was already 200 years old, and the old man was only 90. He was her grandson. The grandson was not obeying the village custom of eating goqizi every day. As a result, he had already aged prematurely. The Persian man was very shocked, but he decided to take this herb back to Persia and spread it in Central Asia. This story is certainly not historically accurate, but it gives you a funny image that can stick. It helps us to remember the anti-aging effects of goqizi. In fact, goqizi can increase T3 and T4, which are very important thyroid hormones, and it increases cortisol in aged rats. The deficiency of these are responsible for graying hair and declining visual acuity. In addition, goqizi increases superoxide dismutase, an antioxidant our body makes that declines with age. Here's the really beautiful part. When you combine Chinese chrysanthemum and goqizi, you get some real magic. When they're combined, they serve to protect the optic nerve. It's shown to enhance the activity of T-AOC and CAT in the crystalline lens of the eye. It increases GABA content and GAD activity in the visual cortex. It also decreases the MDA content in the crystalline lens and GABA-T activity in the visual cortex. This means that it's not only helping the lens of the eye, it's also helping to protect the optic nerve, and then the area of the brain associated with visual processing. This incredible herbal combination of only 2 plants is taking care of 3 aspects of vision. This is very important if you like things like night vision and visual acuity. This pair can also increase superoxide dismutase, glutathione, and glutathione peroxidase. These are very important antioxidants which help with protecting nerves. Gochitsa, in particular, reduces lipid peroxidation, which is associated with diabetic neuropathy and cataracts. The combination of these 2 herbs can help lower blood pressure. Topically, the tea has been used to reduce puffiness in the eyes, particularly in the mornings. There are also eye drops made out of this combination. When it comes to goji berries, there's been a lot of marketing in North America. However, much of it has been disingenuous. You see many companies advertising so-called Tibetan goji berries. If they're red and they claim to be Himalayan or Tibetan goji berries, it's a lie. The Tibetan goji berries are actually black. The highest quality of goji berries comes from the Ningxia province, and you'll know their quality because they float in water. The gochitsa from Qinghai in Mongolia is second-rate and will sink. These are lower quality. They still have positive effects, but you may need a higher dose to get an equivalent effect. If you do get a hold of some black Tibetan goji berries, it's a good idea to test the quality. If you put them in basic water, they should turn the water blue. Then take some of the same batch and put the berries in acidic water, and it should turn the water pink. If they don't do either of these, chances are that you have an inferior product. If you go to any tea house in China and you ask for chrysanthemum tea, they will most likely add goji berries. Sometimes they'll add just a little bit of rock sugar to sweeten the bitterness. It's very prolific, and the combination has been used for thousands of years. This isn't a combination that I would say has a dramatic therapeutic effect at the dosage you might have in a tea house. However, when it's combined with herbal formulas that have effects on the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, it has very dramatic effects on cataracts and for visual acuity. One particular formula studied is called Qi Ju Di Huang Wan. Qi is from the gochitsa, Ju is from the Juhua, which means Chinese chrysanthemum, and Di Huang is referring to a particular herb that has a component in it called cattle. This component is very powerful for regulating cortisol levels and for repairing nerve damage. This is very important because visual disturbances tend to mean that we're receiving damage to our optic nerve.
Andrew mentioned earlier about using those 2 herbs as eye drops. However, there's something that you should know, that you should not make the eye drops at home by yourself. It's a more complicated process of making eye drops that you can put directly into your eyes instead of just decocting or boiling your herbs at home. There are situations that you shouldn't take those 2 herbs, such as if you're having a cold or a fever or diarrhea. In those situations, you shouldn't take those 2 herbs.
About 8 years ago, I was taking a combination of these herbs in an alcohol extract. I had the herbs and the alcohol for about a month, and every day I was taking a shot or 2 with dinner. The good side is that it improved my vision dramatically. The bad side is that I had recently bought glasses, and it changed my vision to the point that my prescription was no longer valid. Then it was writing the book in light and weight. I was spending way too much time in front of a computer screen, and it tended to move my vision a little bit back to what it was before. During that time, I had not been keeping up with this herbal formula, but I'm going to start again and let you know how it goes within the next few months.
That sounds like a genius formula. What are the herbs in this formula?
The herbal formula itself is made up of 9 grams each of the following herbs. The first one is goqizi, which we've been talking about. The second one is called tusizi, and the third one is sayuanzi. These 3 together are very good for tonifying Jing and helping the eyes. There are some formulas that will use Chinese chrysanthemum in the alcohol extracts. However, for the way that the Chinese chrysanthemum is extracted, I prefer using the tea form. I feel that the alcohol can be a little bit harsh in its extraction and may do some damage to the constituents, particularly the essential oils. For the tea, it's not that specific. Oftentimes in Chinese tea houses, you might get 2 or 3 of the chrysanthemum flowers and maybe another 2 or 3 of the berries. This is pretty useless. To get a good effect, you're really going to want somewhere around 9 grams for the chrysanthemum and at least 6 for the goji berries. If you're doing less than that, that's fine. It can be very refreshing. At doses of maybe 3 grams, you may even get some anti-inflammatory effects. But if you really want to be benefiting the eyes, it's important to use effective doses. One of the key herbal formulas I mentioned earlier is called qiju di huangwan. It's also called mingmu di huangwan. If you're having trouble remembering some of these Mandarin phrases, don't worry. We'll have the show notes with details, not only the names, but where you might be able to get them. If you would like more information, references, or resources, please check us out at botanicalbiohacking.com. If you found this information valuable, please share it with your friends and family.